During her confirmation hearing, the South Carolina governor pledged to push for reforms. Cheapest fare on board American Airlines will soon mean no rolling carry-on to be stashed in that overhead bin.
In late February, the airline will unveil its version of a basic economy fare that will apparently cost less than other coach tickets, but come with fewer comforts. Buyers will be allowed to carry a personal item that fits under their seat and won't be allowed to use the overhead bin space. But they'll still have access to main cabin perks like in-flight entertainment, free snacks, and non-alcoholic drinks. American is the last of the big three domestic airlines to offer the lower cost option. I'm Sierra Crawford.
California officials have withdrawn their request to sell unsubsidized insurance policies to people who can't prove they're legally in the U.S. I'm Barbara Cusack.
Hiring is the most challenging part of my job.
We started using ZipRecruiter about 3 months ago. One click and my job was posted to 200 plus job boards, all the top sites.
All of the candidates came to my dashboard, and it's easy to compare them.
And I couldn't believe the number of great applicants we got. I don't know how we hired before ZipRecruiter.
Find the best candidates with ZipRecruiter, where your job is just one click away from 200 plus job sites. And right now you can try ZipRecruiter free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/talk. That's ZipRecruiter.com/talk.
This is Charles Osgood. Since auto owners insurance began in 1916, the world has entered the information age of computers, email, and smartphones. While technology continues to advance, we believe people help people best. That's why you'll only find auto owners insurance from your local independent agent, a real person who protects your life, family, and business. Auto owners insurance, 100 years of putting people first.
In Payson, call Crabtree Insurance and Financial Services at 928-474-2265.
From the KFNX WeatherBug Weather Center for tonight, mostly clear, a low 45. Wednesday, sunny, the high 65. Wednesday night, partly cloudy, a low 48. Thursday, possible showers with the high 60. Thursday night, showers, thunderstorms, the low 47. I'm Keith Langlass from the KFNX WeatherBug Weather Center.
Currently, in downtown Phoenix, it's 59 degrees.
Independent Talk, 1100 KFNX.
The Del Walmsley Show, weekdays at 2 p.m.
If you had any idea how absolutely insane the stock market is, how upside down and backwards every investment principle is that every financial planner teaches, you as 90% of the people who take my seminar walk out of there and stop doing everything you're doing right now.
The Del Walmsley Show, weekdays at 2 p.m. Everything you need to know about finance and real estate. For more information, mypassiveincomesystem.com. mypassiveincomesystem.com.
Save money and income with Darcy and Heather, Safe Money Specialists.
If you would like more information and a copy of our free Safe Information Kit, call us now at 855-560-SAFE. That's 855-560-SAFE. Our kit gives you details about safe money programs and how you can earn market-like returns without any risk of the market, can eliminate fees that you're now being charged on your mutual funds or brokerage accounts, can start feeling secure knowing that your retirement money is safe and growing. 855-560-SAFE. It's 855-560-SAFE.
I'll make our government open and transparent.
Tired of being lied to by Washington? Tired of being hoodwinked by the mainstream media?
The press is so dishonest.
Then go to 21stcenturywire.com for the very best U.S. and international news and analysis. Also for premium reports, podcasts, videos, and documentaries, subscribe and become a member at 21wire.tv. Visit www.21stcenturywire.com.
Don't touch that dial. Independent Talk, 1100 KFNX.
This is Patrick Henningsen Live, brought to you by 21stcenturywire.com. And now, breaking down the news in ways no one else will, here's Patrick.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Patrick Henningsen Live. Welcome to the broadcast here on Independent Talk, 1100 KFNX, over the AM frequency here throughout greater Phoenix and central Arizona and globally at 1100KFNX.com. This hour of Overdrive is brought to you by 21stcenturywire.com and also 21wire.tv. Go there for all your news, views, and analysis. And also a big shout out to our listeners on the global internet streams, on the TuneIn app, Spreaker app, and also the crew at alternatecurrentradio.com. And we had a fantastic show this past Sunday. We had a number of live people coming in from various parts of the world. We had a tremendous broadcast. You can listen to that at 21stcenturywire.com. And I just got off the plane from New York City. That was interesting. So I was at the United Nations I think it was last night. Yeah, last night at the United Nations for a ceremony there. Basically, RT, the Russian channel, English language channel, was nominated as an in-house broadcaster at the United Nations. It was kind of a big deal. And there's a number of press and journalists there, and I was there covering that story. And then this morning, I was in Trump Tower, and that was also interesting. And I was loitering down in the press pit with all the fake news agencies were down there, NBC, CBS, CNBC, Fox, I think, CNN, of course. But yeah, that was interesting. And everyone was hanging out by the lift, trying to photograph Trump as he came down. Unfortunately, he wouldn't come down for about an hour, and so I got tired of waiting, so I left. But it was interesting. It was interesting. And yes, they only serve Russian dressing down at the Trump Grill if you order a salad. So big scandal there. I'm sure Michael Savage would be happy to hear about that. So definitely conspiracy. But President Obama's been busy this week. We're going to tell you about what he's been doing in the next minute or so. But we got a very special guest as well lined up tonight. We've got Jay Dyer, the author of Esoteric Hollywood, fast becoming a best-selling book, top of the charts on the Hollywood Entertainment news section on Amazon.com. He's going to join us to talk about his new book, which is basically looking at Hollywood and film in the symbolism hidden and embedded within these films, and very interesting conversation we're going to have with him in a couple of minutes. But what's President Obama's been busy on the pardon trail. This is interesting. Chelsea Manning, Bradley Manning, what have you, he's been pardoned, and that's a quid pro quo. That means Julian Assange might be giving himself up to the U.S. authorities, leaving the basement of the Ecuadorian embassy in London. That should be interesting. General James Cartwright, Marine General, great patriot, served his country and probably did the most valuable thing for his country by blowing the whistle on the Stuxnet virus. He's been pardoned by the president. I think that was a pretty good move. And then there's a Puerto Rican terrorist. This guy's name is Oscar Lopez Rivera, a Puerto Rican, quote, nationalist. In the New York Times, it's a nationalist. Everyone else is a terrorist. But that was interesting. Why is Obama pardoned this guy? And what's interesting is Bill Clinton pardoned 16 members that were Puerto Rican terrorists as well in the last day of his administration on his way out the door. What is it with the Puerto Rican terrorists and the Clintons and the Obamas? What's the deal there? And I would venture to guess that this guy, it's just part of a routine. It's probably an FBI informant or CIA informant, and it's just understood that they're going to get a pardon as soon as that president is in his last days in office. So there's something going on there. There's a little bit of a backdoor deal, which we'll never find out about, but that's interesting. The other one is Ian Schrager, the boutique hotel magnate, former owner of Studio 54. He was pardoned by Obama. And that's interesting because I read somewhere that Obama hung out and partied at Studio 54 in the late 70s. You see all those iconic black and white photos on the internet of Obama smoking a joint, wearing a really stylish hat, looking very cool, and as you do in New York City. And so is this somebody Obama used to party with at Studio 54 alongside some other wonderful and weird and wacky people? Is that what this is? Old clubbing buddies, basically, saying, hey, don't worry, I'll take care of that. Ian, on my way out. That's interesting. What else is interesting? Ian Schrager applied for the pardon in 2012 to the law firm Hogan and Lovells in Washington, D.C. And I just thought, where's that name? Where have I heard that name before? Hogan and Lovells, Loretta Lynch's law firm. Very interesting. And James Comey, I think, did a stint there when it was Hogan and Howes, I think, a different name, but now it's Hogan and Lovells. And so I guess if you know the right people in Washington, and you know the right law firm, you can probably get a presidential pardon. So if anybody needs, it's too late now because it's pretty much over. But if another Democratic president gets in and you want a pardon, just contact Hogan and Lovell's law firm in Washington, D.C. They might be able to help with the process. So that's interesting. I learned something new today. But that'll be interesting to see. I've got the head of the New York Daily News. I think it's a tabloid, and it had Chelsea Manning on the front, and it said traitor leak or something like that, and basically lambasting Obama's pardon of Chelsea Manning. A lot of people give mixed reviews on that. I don't think it's a bad pardon myself, because I think what he released was probably in the public interest. And the fact that there's going to be Julian Assange coming out of the basement in London is a good thing. Definitely a good thing. So we got a lot to look forward to in 2017. It's already shaping up to be a very, very interesting year. And what else have we got? Oh, the inauguration's on Friday, of course. New president, so we're told anyway. That's if the inauguration goes through without a hitch. Michael Moore has apparently organized about 100,000 people. There's 1,000 coach buses, 50-seaters booked to come into D.C., and so that'll be interesting. The Women's March is on Saturday. So it's what's going to happen? Are they going to tear up Washington, D.C. on Friday? I don't know. I don't think so. But it should be interesting. And I think once we get this whole routine over with, this ritual of the inauguration, hopefully the government can get down to the business of governing, and the new president can be sworn in and can start working for the American people, because isn't that why we had an election? Although some people might beg to differ with me. They're already talking about impeaching Trump, although he hasn't done anything yet in office. They've Maxine Waters and others, I guess John Lewis from Georgia, and some of these people would love to impeach the incoming president. So I guess it'll be just a question of finding scandals to impeach Trump. So I'm sure he'll be under a microscope. That's for certain. And before we go to the break, I'm going to bring on our guest. He's an author. His website is called jaysanalysis.com. You can go look that up online, and his name is Jay Dyer, the author of the new book Esoteric Hollywood, which is published by Trinity Publishing. You can also get your copy of his new book there on his website, jaysanalysis.com. And Jay, we got a couple of minutes for the break, Jay, but I just wanted to say hello, welcome to Independent Talk, KFNX. How you doing?
Doing great, Patrick. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. And so, Jay, the book is finally out. I know that you had it in pre-order for quite a long time, and you did rack up quite a few pre-orders. I'm sure your publisher was very happy about that. But how is it going so far? How's the reception been for the book?
It's been tremendous. I think in total, between Amazon and Goodreads, I have about 30 to 40, almost all 5-star reviews. So very, very good. All the readers who have gotten through it so far have messaged me back and said that the ones that have messaged me have said that they really loved it. They really benefited from it. Part of that delay in the process was actually adding a lot of extra material. So even though it's 363 pages, you're actually getting about another 40 or 50 pages that I wrote that kind of turned it into almost a textbook with little sidebars, that give you an explanation of the players are, who the actors are in this big social engineering project that I think, a propaganda project that I think Hollywood actually is, and that's what I argue in the book. But yeah, it's been a long process, but it's all come together, and it's doing very well. It's only officially been out for about a month now, and we're already on the second printing.
Well, we're going to talk about that and more. We're going to find out what is Esoteric Hollywood after the break. I'm here with author Jay Dyer. We'll be right back. Independent Talk, 1100 KFNX. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. Stay right there. It's It's time.
Independent Talk.
Since 2009, 21st Century Wire has been a trusted source of alternative news with opinion, analysis, investigative reports, and features covering stories from North America to Europe, to the Middle East, and globally. In the last 2 years, we've grown dramatically. This year, we're expanding our programming and our reporting and adding to our team of dedicated contributors. But we need your help. There is a way you can support us. Go to 21wire.tv and click on 21Wire Membership to find out more about how you can help support our platform by subscribing and becoming a member. In return, we promise to keep it independent and keep it real. But that's not all. By subscribing to 21wire.tv, members will get access to more premium content, like virtual private screenings of new documentaries and short films, and get inside access to members' podcasts, like On the QT with Patrick Henningsen. And also, you can see our new morning commute show, Drive by Wire with Sean Helton, as well as our new geopolitical current affairs series, Insight, shot in high definition. By becoming a member, you're also helping to support the Sunday Wire radio show, as well as all our great reporting at 21stcenturywire.com. And there's more. Members will also gain access to our fortnightly Members Situation Report newsletter, as well as special discounts on all 21 Wire merchandise up at our online store, Shop 21. Subscribe and become a member at 21wire.tv.
It's that 25% of American seniors are deficient in B12, a known factor of cognitive decline, potentially leading to memory loss. Ask for Emerald Laboratories Memory Health at your local health food store today, or learn more about it at shopnaturalproducts.com. That's shopnaturalproducts.com.
Log on and listen live. 1100kfnx.com.
All right, welcome back. This is Patrick Henningsen live here on Independent Talk, 1100 KFNX. We're here with our guest, Jay Dyer, author of Esoteric Hollywood, the newly released title, which is available at jaysanalysis.com and also up at Amazon. But we're here. Jay, what is it about in a nutshell? I know there's, you go into the book section and you look up film, you look up Hollywood, and you can see a number of titles at your local bookstore. But usually looking at films in terms of either reviewing them or putting them into sort of genres like horror or the best horror films or the best science fiction films or the best sort of mystery films, murder mystery films, and so forth. So, but you've assembled a different collection here. And just explain to our listeners, what you put together here in a nutshell with Esoteric Hollywood.
Yeah, correct. It's not your typical Roger Ebert, Leonard Maltin take on film. There's a degree of that. There's an element of looking at symbolism and meaning in film, which, for example, Roger Ebert will do in many of his books. But it's also something much more than that. What I wanted to do was really compile the most read essays that I'd written over the last 5 or 6 years that dealt with the interplay between reality and fiction and how that relates to movies. And so I think we tend to overlook the fact that Hollywood has a tremendous power in terms of forming our worldviews and our perspectives, especially in America. And of course, that Hollywood empire has now gone global. Things like James Bond are some of the most recognizable icons in imagery across the world. People in Pakistan know the image of James Bond or 007 when they see it. And I think that has been a tremendous tool for social engineering, for propaganda, for promoting wars, for all sorts of things like that. And what I wanted to do was write a book that tried to integrate all of these aspects of film. So it's not all serious. There's also some kind of satirical, kind of jokey sections where I look at some older goofy films. But I started with picking out just some of the big directors, Kubrick, Spielberg, Hitchcock, Lynch, and the 007 series. And I wanted to basically say, what are these directors saying, and what might we divine in a deeper sense in terms of philosophy or geopolitics or propaganda, or even, as I said, more lighthearted and satirical perspectives that they might be painting through these films. So I keep making the joke that it's like Roger Ebert on acid in a way. It's like that, but it's much more than that.
And so let's start with. I know there's a lot of in terms of social engineering in Hollywood, there's a lot of obvious stuff. Cultural themes. Teenagers, children rebelling against the family and rejecting the family. That was a big theme through the 1980s. In the 1990s, sort of breaking up sort of the family. You seldom see married couples in film as characters, and from the 70s onwards, it'd be more like single life, broken families, and so forth. And then you have the other type of social engineering now, which is really prevalent in the last 15 years, which is the fear of a pandemic, a bio attack, a terrorist attack, or the end of the world in all its various forms. But what I know you can comment on that, but what you're picking out here is much more subtle, I think. You're honing in on the subtleties of the storylines, and what the director's trying to say, and sometimes not just through one film, directors continuing the thread or the message through a series of films. Just talk about that a little bit.
Well, a great example of that would be something like Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick has a lot of common themes in his films that are pretty profound that you don't see in a lot of directors. And some of the more obvious ones might be something like Class Warfare. Yes, I think we could put Kubrick in that sort of traditional leftist Hollywood view, but there's also aspects that he's willing to touch on that were pretty shocking and I guess controversial for his time. So, for example, elite pedophilia is a theme that does actually run through Lolita, The Shining, Eyes Wide Shut. Many of the Barry Lyndon, many of the Kubrick films deal with that. So he wasn't afraid to take on pretty dark topics. But you also get themes of Dr. Strangelove dealing with other Rand Corporation and war propaganda. So the elites, the oligarchical ability to manipulate society in different sections of society, actually, which is something that Aldous Huxley talked about in his Brave New World, was that there would be types of propaganda for different sections of society. And so we see that coming out, for example, in a lot of Kubrick films. And so what I tried to do was talk about this kind of stuff in both a readable and scholarly way. So I wanted to kind of thread that needle between, being too obscure, being too obtuse, but also not being watered down, being willing to take on the more difficult and, topics that we might tend to shy away from. This idea of pedophilia in Hollywood, or the idea of secret societies, being a means or a tool by which society is manipulated, or a means by which the deep state or intelligence agencies can, manipulate or traffic in information or drugs or any of these kinds of black market operations that are quite often revealed in films and, sort of hidden in plain sight right in front of our eyes. We're watching it on TV screens. We're seeing it in fictional presentations. Sometimes that's misdirection. Sometimes it's projection. And yet, 2, 10, 5 years later, we'll see a news story that perfectly corresponds with something that we saw, in a film years prior. So that's what I do, is I look at a lot of these examples of this phenomenon of, seeing propaganda and, as you said, subtle imagery, subtle hints, nudges, to use the Kesslin theme terminology, and that it runs the gamut. It's across the spectrum of everything from what you mentioned, like breaking up the family, to sort of social engineering aspects of things, to war propaganda things like Zero Dark 30 or American Sniper, how these promote a certain foreign policy agenda by the Pentagon, Argo, something like that, as well as I said, these sort of deeper subjects, like darker subjects like Eyes Wide Shut. But I mean, it's all over the board. So, I've got sections on what I think Spielberg was trying to do. And we can go back to Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds broadcast, which was a Rockefeller study. And I think you even did a recent treatise on that, where you were talking about how that actually had to do with advertising as well. So it wasn't just...
Yeah, it was the first fake news crisis, 1938, just to show people that how these themes repeat itself over the decades. But before we break to, what about with Kubrick? Firstly, was he trying to signal to the public, to warn the public, or was this sometimes, you could say, some people are saying that the elites would work through Hollywood in order to sort of gloat or to do to telegraph an agenda to the subconscious of the public? And then there's predictive programming. So, how do these terms kind of fit in? I mean, the predictive programming thing, I know that you've written a lot about, and a lot of people, that's a widely discussed topic as well. But how does that fit into, let's just take Stanley Kubrick's work, for instance?
Well, I tend to think that he was probably a person who realized that to be at the level that he got to, there would be some compromises along the way. So there's a story, at least, of the deep state offering him, that NASA actually offered him the use of a certain type of lens, which was rumored to cost $1 million or something like that. And so this was coveted by people behind the camera, I guess, across the entertainment spectrum. And so a lot of people think that perhaps Kubrick went along with some things so that he could have access to this kind of lens and so forth. And I would say that to be at the level that he was at, and to openly have worked with the highest levels of NASA, like George Mueller, and to be working in tandem with Arthur C. Clarke suggests some level of compromise and complicity. But I also want to be fair to him and say that it's also entirely possible that just merely as an artist, he really did also want to get a good message out.
Yeah. Well, his work is definitely seminal. 2001 Space Odyssey, that's one that definitely comes to mind, is a real groundbreaking visual film and really expansive in terms of imagination. But we're going to talk about some other directors like Steven Spielberg, like in the James Bond series based on Ian Fleming's novels of 007 fame. We're going to talk about those also after the break, and also we want to see if it's possible. We're going to delve into the esoteric work of someone like David Lynch and other similar directors like that, and people that you've chronicled in this book, Esoteric Hollywood, which is Trinday Publishing. This is available now, and we are going to take callers in the second half hour as well. So if you want to call in 602-277-5369. That's 602-277-5369. And the first caller, you're going to win a signed copy of Esoteric Hollywood, signed by Jay Dyer. He's here on the line with us as our guest this week at Independent Talk 1100 KFNX. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We'll be right back after these messages.
It looks like the last of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks have been selected. A source indicates that former Georgia Governor Sonny Perdue is Mr. Trump's choice to serve as Agriculture Secretary. During his final news conference, President Obama extended his best wishes to former President George H.W. Bush and his wife Barbara, who are both hospitalized. Turning to foreign affairs, he also expressed concerns about resolving tensions between Israel and the Palestinians.
If you do not have two states, then in some form or fashion, you are extending an occupation. Functionally, you end up having one state in which millions of people are disenfranchised and operate as second-class occupant or residents.
Just 2.1% of California is now deemed in exceptional drought, with the worst area narrowed to a small region northwest of Los Angeles. I'm Barbara Cusack.
From the KFNX WeatherBug Weather Center for tonight, mostly clear, a low 45. Wednesday, sunny, the high 65. Wednesday night, partly cloudy, a low 48. Thursday, possible showers with the high 60. Thursday night, showers, thunderstorms, the low 47. I'm Keith Langlass from the KFNX WeatherBug Weather Center.
Currently in downtown Phoenix, it's 59 degrees.
Independent Talk, 1100 KFNX.
Upper Crust Pizza Patio and Wine Bar is the Valley hotspot. Stop by for happy hour weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m. with wine, beer, food, and drink specials. Or bring the family in on Tuesday for family night with $10 one-topping 18-inch pizzas. Wednesday, half off all bottles of wine on the regular list of over 40 bottles. Upper Crust Pizza Patio and Wine Bar on the southeast corner of Cave Creek and the 101. Visit uppercrustwinebar.com. uppercrustwinebar.com.
Green Living Magazine is the premier lifestyle publication that promotes eco-conscious values with how you live, work, and play. Find solutions to trending green issues, fun approaches to greening your world, and information on green events statewide. Become a Greenie member for $49, which includes a 12-issue print and digital subscription, Green Living t-shirt and pen, exclusive discounts from advertisers, and discounted admission to the launch party. Visit greenlivingaz.com/greenie or call 480-840-1589. For tickets to Green Living's next launch party, go to greenlivingaz.com/party.
I'll make our government open and transparent.
Tired of being lied to by Washington? Tired of being hoodwinked by the mainstream media?
The press is so dishonest.
Then go to 21stcenturywire.com for the very best U.S. and international news and analysis. Also for premium reports. If you want to call in and talk to Jay about Esoteric Hollywood or about the films that you know and love, or are interested in knowing more about, call us at 602-277-5369. That's 602-277-5369. And the first caller, the winner, will receive a signed copy of Esoteric Hollywood, which we'll ship to you. So definitely get in the queue and let's hear what you have to say about this. But Jay, so 007... most people look at the 007 James Bond films, and, you know, it's a bit of fun, it's a bit of an adventure, it's a little bit of cloak and dagger, the British agent gets the girl at the end, some shootouts, a few car chases, and a few nifty gadgets. But there's a lot more actually going on in these films than most people would see on the surface. Tell us a little bit about Ian Fleming, tell us about the James Bond series, what is really at play there?
Sure. Well, the first interesting fact is that Ian Fleming was a high-level naval PSYOPs officer for the British Navy, and then he would basically continue that role of doing Her Majesty's service secretly as he trotted the globe and hung out with billionaires such as Aristotle Onassis, and would actually meet with people like Bill Donovan in the U.S., along with other British agents like Noel Coward and William Stevenson of the Canadian, the British export to Canada, who was running operations there. And when they met with Bill Donovan, they said, you actually need to set up a U.S.-based secret intelligence agency modeled on the British intelligence agency. And so that's where we actually got the OSS. In 1942 is when the OSS is set up. And then eventually this becomes, of course, the CIA. So Ian Fleming played a pretty central role in that, believe it or not, and that's what you get from even mainline biographies on Fleming. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that I dug up, and I started noticing a lot of parallels with what you see in the films in terms of real-world black ops and real-world stories and operations. For example, Operation Mincemeat, which is a famous story where Fleming concocted the idea of using a dead body that would actually have forged papers that the Germans could find, body of a German soldier, and this was actually disinformation, and that was all concocted by Ian Fleming himself. So he actually participated in some real-world operations like this, Operation Goldeneye, where he was spying on Franco included some of these stories into the novels, as well as actually stories from other British agents. And so there's all that neat stuff. Yeah, that's all cool and fun. But you also have to understand that just like what we see perhaps with a Jason Bourne or a Chris Kyle American Sniper movie, these are used for propaganda. And in my view, unless you're towing the party line, unfortunately, your stories don't get made into big blockbusters, right? And so it's no accident that the royal family has attended the premieres of all the Bond films, and that's because they're created for the intention of promoting what you might call the Western establishment narrative. And the Bond films have been very successful at that, and so a good way to kind of deconstruct that matrix is to basically anything that Blofeld or Smersh or any of these international villains are portrayed as doing, or the Russians or whoever, that's actually being done by the West for the most part, right? Insofar as the West is sort of the dominant power in the globe since, the last several hundred years, I guess you could argue. So it's projection, it's propaganda, but there's also a lot of other neat little tidbits, like the fact that product placement, it really takes off in the Bond series. There were examples of product placement in a film prior to Fleming, but it really became successful and noticeable because the character of Bond would become so iconic. So when Sean Connery's, wearing, driving around in an Aston Martin or using a Walter PPK gun or drinking a martini, or these things become associated with this figure, and that becomes a selling point. And so that's really where they started figuring out that films can be used in that way. Just on the marketing level alone, I'm saying it's fascinating. So there's all of that goes into it, but you get these interesting revelations, I guess you could say, about how the deep state operates in things like, say, Diamonds Are Forever, where you have black markets being run by shells and fronts, and who's behind it all? Well, it's these kind of oligarchs back there, right? It's these guys who tie into real world oligarchs like Howard Hughes, right? So Howard Hughes is a big player in that. There's other indicators that sometimes Ian Fleming might be referencing Aristotle Onassis, and that plays out in the films and the character of Emilio Largo in the early film incarnations. You also get hints at sort of the Third Reich perspective of eugenics and the character of Sir Hugo Drax, right, who is hell-bent on eugenics and depopulation. And this plays a big role in the Moonraker novel. Mm-hmm. It's translated into the film version of Moonraker in a kind of a goofy way, but he's not exactly. It's not exactly this. That one was sort of like Star Wars meets James Bond, right? It's really silly.
Yeah, it was a camp space sort of odyssey. It was really bizarre. It's very with Roger.
What's interesting too is that even up into the 80s, the Timothy Dalton era. I was watching one of those a couple months ago, and who does Timothy Dalton happen to fall in with and aid? Well, it's the Mujahideen.
Right, in Afghanistan. Right there,
yes. Hanging out in Afghanistan with the progenitor, or what would become Al-Qaeda. So there's a big indicator right there.
Well, in a way, the Bond series and these types of films, you talked about the Bourne series, it kind of sugarcoats the sort of clandestine operations. It's almost like we can live vicariously in the cinema with the clandestine world, but yet and kind of leave it contained there. And then in the real world, we won't ask many questions about it because we've got secret agents running around and they're trying to basically save us from the bad guys. But it does kind of sugarcoat it, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. And in fact, the real world of that kind of stuff is nasty and dirty and some of the worst aspects of humanity. Insofar as what you're really dealing with is big scale criminal operations. You're not talking about a lot of sex and glamour. You're talking about blackmail. You're talking about human trafficking. That's the real part of it. But Hollywood was very successful in sort of following the train of British fiction writers like William Somerset Maugham and Joseph Conrad and these other characters in creating the notion of spy culture. And I believe that was actually probably drawn up by institutions like Tavistock, who did interestingly look at the Hitchcock films for their psychological effect. There is some evidence to suggest that, and we can't forget that Hitchcock was actually a major figure in promoting spy culture. Many of his early films were spy films. Many of his later most famous films were spy films, like North by Northwest, which is one of the first films to feature the CIA, this nascent secret operation that run by a bunch of academics that's using Cary Grant as the innocent fool who stumbles into this operation, right? Mm-hmm. There's actually a lot of truth in that, because what is the CIA in reality? Well, in terms of its brains, it is a lot of academics. It's a lot of professors and people in universities, and they actually do use people as tools. So in that regard, you can find truth even in the Hitchcock spy films.
We got a caller on the line. We got Robin from Victoria, from actually British Columbia, up in Canada. So, Robin on the line. We've got here with Jay Dyer, author of Esoteric Hollywood. What's on your mind, Robin?
How you doing, guys? Thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of both of yours. I've been following Jay for a few years now, and I've just in the last year or so come across yourself, Patrick, and I'm really thank you guys a lot for the work you do, and I hope you're able to, years to come.
Okay. Okay. I think
years to come.
Okay. Okay. I think we dropped that one. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, we had a caller there, but we lost the line on that one. But so Jay, back to the task at hand. So here's another theme that's really coming up right now. There's been a lot of films about hacking over the last couple of decades, starting with war games and Swordfish and all these great the Matrix series, obviously. And so we have all these great hacking films, but within these films, there's kind of like it's almost like a how-to guide of how to deceive, to hack, and then we're thinking we're kind of helpless because there's all these kind of people behind the scenes, white hats and black hats. That was a big thing, and now we can combine this with artificial intelligence, then the fear of emerging technology as well, this sort of dystopian future with high-tech grids and things that we don't quite understand. And Hollywood kind of boils it down into a kind of a narrative. But is that one of the emerging themes? I know this isn't covered in your book, but it's certainly coming pretty hard and fast, especially in the last couple of years. Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you. Did you hear that?
Yeah. In a tangential way, it does connect, because I cover things like Philip K. Dick stories, right? I mean, I do Blade Runner, I do Minority Report. Those are Philip K. Dick stories, as well as the Spielberg's take on AI, artificial intelligence. And, of course, these all deal with that kind of cyber culture, cyber hacking meme that Hollywood really started pushing with films like Sneakers in the late 80s, 89 or 90, and then into the 90s you started getting this recurring theme of hacking with Johnny Mnemonic and Ghost in the Machine and a lot of these kinds of films. So you're absolutely right that was put out as a preparation for what we would be experiencing in the era that we're in now. And I one of the arguments I do make in the book is that a lot of the science fiction that we saw, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago was quite often accurately describing the situation that we're in today. So I argue that you could deduce from that a lot of the science fiction that we may see today is what we're going to see in the next 15 or 20 years. So in that regard, you could actually kind of do some predictive programming to predict the future, decode and deconstruct the future. And so the the narrative that we're always given, you're right, is that there's the good guys, the good hackers, the bad hackers, and then, but then in reality, of course, when defense agencies hold these large hacking companies, that they, of course, invite all of the white hat and quote black hat hackers, and they will come to DEF CON and they will try to recruit people.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of smoke and mirrors. Of course, I'm not any expert on hacking or anything like that, but I would tend to think that the Navy and the Pentagon and these entities pretty well have the dark web and deep web and all of that covered. And so I don't think that I wouldn't put a lot of stock in any of these hacking stories, especially not the more recent ludicrous narrative with absolutely no evidence of the Russian hacking, which is quite clearly a sort of a GOP / Democratic operative / CIA concocted narrative, I would argue.
So how long do you give it, Jay, before there's going to be a Russian hacking Hollywood blockbuster? So, you know, the Arabs have been the kind of Hollywood bad guy of choice really for the last sort of 15 years post 9/11. Before that, It was Cold War. It was the Russians, So do you think Hollywood's going to start producing a slew of kind of Russian oligarch or Russian?
Yeah, actually, the last Jack Ryan film that was rebooted with, I think it was Kevin Costner and Ryan Felipe or somebody like that. All of the villains were secret Russian agents who had hacked Wall Street in some way. Somehow they hacked the New York Stock Exchange, and they caused the drop in the dollar or some such nonsense as this. So you could actually probably argue that the last Jack Ryan installment was almost a predictive programming preparation for what we're seeing now. You know, we're told that the Russians somehow hacked the election and got Trump. You know?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, and absolutely. So that was actually seeded in advance. I think not just in that film, Jay, and many other films. I'm starting to come back in my memory now. But so in terms of politics, let's talk social engineering. Steven Spielberg, the Star Wars series. You see a lot of these, and we all know it's accepted as common knowledge that Hollywood is really a bastion of progressive liberal politics. And so somehow these themes kind of make their way into even science fiction films. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, could be a really long way away, but yet the liberal progressive kind of social agenda is really sort of very, very visible out there in outer space. How does this work its way into films? Because I know this is a big part of Hollywood as well. You start to see, especially with the new Star Wars films. But what have you observed along those lines?
Well, much in the same way that Ian Fleming's novels, which were pulp fiction, eventually became almost perhaps part of the canon of Western literature, supposedly. A lot of the older science fiction writing was, it was written for kids, adolescents. A lot of that was also in the 40s and 50s pulp. You had these amazing stories magazines where these guys would put out these goofy, weird stories, and it wasn't really taken seriously until, eventually I think Hollywood is really what boosted these things into immediately being in everybody's consciousness. Everybody knows what Star Wars is. Everybody knows what these blockbusters are because of the power of Hollywood. You could argue that maybe Jules Verne or Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote novels that were very popular, but they were still seen as something adolescent. They were boys' adventure stories, and then eventually you're supposed to grow out of that. But the power of Hollywood is such that now we see grown men still dressing up like comic book characters, still living out these science fiction fantasies, role-playing, cosplay. All this has just exploded. Comic-Cons, right, everywhere. And that's the power of Hollywood and science fiction. So never underestimate that. And what I go into is how science fiction can actually be a tool of social engineering as well, and I believe it has been. Not trying to be unfair. I'm a fan of science fiction. I like a lot of classic sci-fi, but I also recognize the power and ability of that to be used to take people in in, as you said, more liberal social engineering directions. For example, Star Trek, right? This whole idea of the Federation of Star Trek, of all the planets together, this sort of liberal model of everybody going along to get along, and in what Star Trek tends to do is characterize anybody as who disagrees with the Federation as a terrorist, right? And this is precisely what we see in this sort of Western Washington model of, quote, rogue states or Russia or whatever. These are the terrorist nations that they hack us, they terrorize us, when in fact those narratives are essentially constructed fiction. And so science fiction is also a tool for all of that as well. If you think back to the Cold War, a lot of the alien stories, believe it or not, be it even in something as innocuous as the Twilight Zone, a lot of those stories were made with the cooperation of the Department of Defense. And you say, well, why would the DoD be interested in the Twilight Zone? Well, millions of Americans are going to be tuning into the Twilight Zone, and if you can, for example, portray the aliens, quote unquote, or the foreign, out there, unknown threat, right? The exterior invader, supposedly, right? Mm-hmm. The mind subconsciously identifies the alien invaders, right, or the pod people, with that foreign threat out there in the world, right? Be it Russians, be it Japanese, be it China, be it Germany.
Yeah,
any of those.
Yeah, communist versus capitalist, and so forth. Yeah.
So science fiction can be used in that way as well, and in a deeper sense, like you were hinting at, it's really science fiction that kind of pioneered the attack on the family, the attack on gender, and so forth. So a lot of what we're seeing with transgenderism, I believe, actually ties into transhumanism, and transhumanism is a science fiction-based, almost religious philosophy of where we're going to be going through technology.
And that traces all the way back, the transhumanism in terms of film and literature. Would you trace that back to Brave New World, Aldous Huxley's seminal novel from the 20th century? Is that where you would trace that back to, or could you go further back?
You could go further back to H.G. Wells, because, for example, in The Island of Dr. Moreau, Wells was already, even then, in the early, it's around 1895 or 90, somewhere in there, Wells was writing about the plasticity of human nature and the human mind. And by that, he was sort of laying out the possibilities of what could be done with genetic engineering and bioengineering. And even in the even mainline scholars actually will talk about the fact that it's amazing the prescience that H.G. Wells had to be able to talk about the plasticity of human nature, that it could be, in his view, engineered in any direction. And nowadays, even neurosurgeons will commonly talk about something like the plasticity of the human brain, that the human brain is adaptable to various situations. And believe it or not, this is actually an idea that was pioneered by H.G. Wells. And so to have a plastic man, a Gumby man, right, that could be molded like Gumby or like Play-Doh into any kind of thing that you wanted through toxins or through chemical additives or through genetic biomodification or whatever, that's a science fiction idea that has been brought into reality.
Yeah, so that's art influencing reality. The imagination of the creators of literature, of film, and the stuff manifesting actually in the in our lives in society. This is not uncommon at all. I think we've seen that many times over now. But and then what are some of the other areas that's piquing your interest right now, either in the book or outside the book? We've got about 2 minutes left, but just your final thoughts.
Well, final thoughts, I would say that one of the more popular analyses I wrote was a really in-depth look at Twin Peaks, and that's going to be very relevant because there's a lot of buzz about the reboot of Twin Peaks. And if anybody doubts the planned nature of all this kind of stuff, the series itself was 25 years ago. And in the series 25 years ago, there was actually a scene where Laura Palmer, the girl who's actually sacrificed in a kind of ritual sacrifice, she actually says, "I will be back in 25 years." And here we have Twin Peaks coming back, being rebooted 25 years later. So
Wow. And is David Lynch directing it?
He is, yes.
He is. Well, yeah, that should be interesting. And it's funny, everybody's 25 years older now, so everyone's at a different time in their life. So that should be interesting how that plays out to that generation, which is now an older generation. But this fascinating stuff, Jay, and I look forward to future books as well. I'm sure you can go novel upon novel, hitting different parts of this, but jaysanalysis.com is the website. You can buy the book directly from there.